God, dude, I struggle with stuff every day still. Like I struggle with addiction, man. Like it is, I'm an addictive person. Like it would be very easy for me to drink a half a bottle to a bottle of Jameson every single day. Probably not a whole bottle, but you know what? If I started with a half a bottle, I'd probably get to a bottle eventually.
Yeah, you'd work your way up to it.
Yeah, man. Narcotics, God, dude, narcotics sure do make you feel good. I mean, it's like a really nice, easy, quick fix. But man, like the when I say I struggle with those things every day, it might because I had struggled with that stuff so much in my past. It might be something where, I'm thinking about relationship with my dad or something. It's like, man, you know what? If I could just take a pill right now, that would really just kind of like mask all that pain. Or on the other end of the spectrum, drinking is something that I'd love to celebrate with a drink. Well, celebrating with 10 drinks is definitely not healthy. But if I did not have limitations, if I didn't have good habits, then these things could certainly end up being a problem.
Because I think you're talking about the residue of the past too, and that always carries forward. So what you're talking about is you're talking about some past habits that have changed, right? And so
what I understand is like in order for me to keep my life clear of clutter, it also means keeping my mind clear of clutter. And those things, especially narcotics, do not add to the clarity. It makes it more cluttered, if anything.
Right.
I mean, Dr. Green last night when we were all having dinner, he showed us that picture of the dude who I forget his name from Mighty Ducks, but he's like the goalie in Mighty Ducks, and he was like this, chubby, fat, like cute kid who was a goalie in this movie, in this kid's movie, and he just got arrested not too long ago for a DUI, and he looks like my grandfather.
He looks like the result of a long-lived hard life.
Yeah,
and it's not even that. It's long because it's painful.
Right.
And what you're talking about,
and there's no judgment here.
No,
it's just a matter of
you're identifying.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I struggle with too, man, is, dude, I always want to buy new stuff. I wish I could sit here and say, hey, listen to our podcasts, read our books, and you will never want to buy anything again, ever. You will be free of this urge to buy stuff. That's just not the case, man. Yeah. I mean, it's like
and if anyone's telling you that, they're probably misleading you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I know I talk about Mariah and I's Toyota Corolla a lot, but I'm saving money for a new car, and I really want to buy a new Tesla. Like if I saved up for another 2 years, 3 years, I could probably have $60,000 to drop on a Tesla.
Right.
But the problem though is that I don't have it. $60,000 is a lot of money for me, a lot of money for a lot of people. But my point is that I'm not going with Dave Ramsey's suggestion.
Yeah.
He says, if you're a millionaire, okay, you can afford to buy a new car.
Yeah, if your net worth is more than $1 million, you can afford to purchase a new car.
Right.
By the way, the average, so that Chris Hogan has that new book coming out in January called Everyday Millionaires, and they did the most comprehensive study of millionaires throughout the country, and more than 10,000 millionaires. And by the way, when we say millionaires, we're talking a lot of teachers and nurses. We're not talking about finance guys and bankers and
everyday people.
Everyday people, and a large percentage of them have made less than $60,000 a year their entire life.
Absolutely.
They've just made good decisions with the resources they have.
Absolutely. But keep going with the Dave Ramsey thing.
Well, and what he talks about with millionaires is you have $1 million net worth, then you're able to buy a new car. But your average millionaire drives a car that is 3 years old or older.
Right, because millionaires didn't become millionaires by buying a new car every year.
Yeah, you don't become a millionaire by spending your money.
But to Elise's question here, she asks, how, what kind of tools do we use to help us through these problems we have? And like Dave Ramsey, he's one of those guys. Like the books that he has, a radio show, whatever it may be, like that's a tool that I use to help keep myself in check. So yeah, like if I had a net worth of $1 million, still would be very hard for me to drop that type of money on a car. But at least I could, like, here's what I envision if you and I ever become millionaires. if I dropped $60,000 on a car, I would have to drop $60,000 on building schools in Laos.
Right.
But right now, I'm not in a position to where I can take $120,000 and divide it up like that.
Right.
So because of these principles, because of these tools that I use, like, no, I'm not going to go out and buy a Tesla.
Right.
Like I've been talking about buying a Tesla for a couple of years. I ain't going to do it now. I mean, unless I have an expendable income.
Yeah, someone drops $10 million on your lap. Here's the thing. You and I are, like, for example, we're helping build the grocery store. You and I are donating over $20,000 of our own money.
And I would rather do that than have a Tesla.
Yeah. And you could, like, hoard that money and say, well, I'm going to, and it'd be okay. It's your money. You do whatever the hell you want with your money.
Yeah, and I'm not like, this is not me virtue signaling, and I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad out there for owning a Tesla. I just want to be very clear on that. I'm just answering Elise's question on the problems that I have and how I'm able to overcome those problems that I have. But it is through reasoning like this. It's through different tools that help me to keep good habits. Because
emotionally, it's really easy to say in the moment, man, that'd be great. I could figure out a way to afford the monthly payment on a Tesla or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And
I can afford the payment.
Right. You just can't afford the car.
Right.
There are two more cartoons I wanted to share with you, Ryan.
Oh, I love cartoons.
So this is another New Yorker one. Jordan, I'll give this to you afterward. You want to describe what this says before it says what it says? Just describe the room.
All right. There's a woman walking through. It looks like an apartment door. She has a scolding look on her face, and there's a dude sitting in the middle of a empty room, hardwood floor, sitting on a chair with a smirk. So she's yelling. He's smirking in an empty room. You came early. Wait.
Go ahead.
The caption says, "You came home early just so you could get the chair." Oh, that's great.
So dude. I think people often think of minimalism like this cartoon, right? Like,
this is deprivation, though, man.
Exactly, and so that's the thing that I want to communicate here with Elise is, you'll struggle with certain things, but this isn't the answer. Having the house with nothing in it is not what we're going for. I mean, you were at my house last night, and there were 6 of us there. We had a table with 6 of us eating dinner.
We all had our own plate.
Yeah.
We all had our own seat.
Almost. Isn't that why you were sitting on my lap?
Yeah, but I still had a seat I could have used if I wanted to.
Jordan, if you want to put that on camera somehow, I'll hand that over to you. But hold on. So with Elise, keep that in mind. Like, as you're letting go, yes, the decluttering of the stuff is not the end result, because that would be your end result. In fact, then you have to get rid of the chair. That's too much stuff, right? Yeah. Why do you have a chair? You're not a real minimalist without a chair.
You know what's funny, man? I just had this thought pop into my head. Like, we always talk about how someone could rent a dumpster, throw away all their stuff, and still be miserable in an empty apartment.
Right.
Like, the the exciting part of minimalism, it is the journey. Like, it is taking this tool, and it's helping one to figure out exactly what adds value to their life. And like that process, the process of doing that, like that's the fun part.
Yeah.
Having an empty room with just a chair in it, like that's not much fun or meaningful for that matter.
Right.
Well, for most people.
But if you want to live that way, I think of our friend Colin Wright, who's out on getting ready to go out on tour right now, the Becoming Tour. I think it's becomingtour.com. He's doing 26 cities in this next year. But for the last 2 years, he's lived in an apartment because he's focused on creating his podcast. Right. And he was renting an apartment in Memphis for the last year. And he got, the basics. He had a desk and a chair. I'm sure his apartment looked fairly similar to that with a few other accoutrements, right? Yeah. And in doing that, that's what was appropriate for him. He didn't like having company over, and so he had what worked just for him in his own space, and that's fine. And now that he's getting ready to leave, he had to even get rid of some of the stuff. So I'm guarantee his apartment looks really similar to that right now. And this is the third and final cartoon, but this cartoon reminded me of Elise. When I was thinking about her question, I saw this cartoon and I was like, this is where Elise is right now. Of course, Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yes.
This the title of this one at the top says Alice in Responsibility Land. And she's coming home. So there's her. She's walked into her kitchen.
Yeah.
And everything that is there, it's like the door says lock me, and the umbrella says put me away, and the food on the counter says cook me, and the dishes in the sink say wash me, and the freezer says defrost me, and the fridge says fill me, and the window says look through me, and the email on the computer says check me, and the plates on the table say clear us, and the bottle of alcohol on the table says don't drink me, and the cupcake on the table says don't eat me, and the bills on the table say pay us, and the purse in her hand says put me down, and the chairs on her or at her kitchen table say wipe us down, and the floor says sweep me.
That is a genius cartoon, man.
And
that is so good.
And we get overwhelmed with these responsibilities. And for me, minimalism is a way not to remove the responsibilities. I'll give this to you, Jordan, so you can put that in.
No, it's a way to choose.
Well. Yes, it's the way to pick better responsibilities.
Yeah.
What am I going to be responsible about? Because we all have to be responsible to something and someone. Why not choose those deliberately instead of just having to deal with the next responsibility that fills our life?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Elise, I'd love to send you a copy of our book, Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life. Sean, if you could reach out to her and send her the audiobook version. If you like the podcast, then you'll probably like the audiobook version of this. It's a relatively short book. It's like 2.5 hours long. It's our shortest book, and it goes over the 5 values. And one thing that we didn't talk to you about is identifying, getting really focused on what your values are, because, Elise, you said you want to be focused and value-driven. And if you want to be value-driven, well, then you better be driven by the right values, because it's possible to not have the right values that are going to move you forward, and then you're going to be like that deflating balloon that we talked about. So we'll give you the audiobook version of that, or if you want the book version or the ebook version, we'll be happy to give you a copy of Live a Meaningful Life in any of those formats.